There's only 4 words. This one's for John. This one's for Pat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NFL with Kyle. Today, it is my pleasure to bring on a Baltimore Ravens fan. Darwin, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited about the NFL season's finally about to start.
I am too, and I've always had a weird relationship with the Ravens. There's like a personal reason that I don't like them with an ex-wife. And then there's the biggest reason, which is the 2012 division champion. Yeah. I mean, like, to say that I've never gotten over that moment is an understatement. It's just like, that was the only, I love football. There's nothing that could happen to make me not watch football. To this day, that's the only postseason that I stopped watching after that game, including the Super Bowl. It just hurt too much.
I can imagine,
I mean, we had it, and then for the Ravens to go on to win the Super Bowl, of course, it feels like, man, that could have been Manning going to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. I mean, all the records that were not that year, but they would be broken the next year, starting week 1 against the Ravens when he threw 7 touchdown passes in the opening game.
I remember that game very. I was calling for John Harbaugh's head after that game, to be 100% honest with you.
Oh, really?
I've got a love-hate relationship. I always give Harbaugh his true respect. But there was some bad XO decisions made that game, roster decisions, and I felt bad for our cornerbacks. Let's just say that.
Yeah, Harbaugh has been, of course, a Super Bowl winning coach, one of the most successful coaches in the league, but he gives me kind of Mike Tomlin vibes in a way where it's been a while since those Super Bowls have happened. And for some reason, it feels like he's absolutely safe. And we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I wanted to start off by giving you an outsider. I consider myself an outsider from the Ravens. My view on the Ravens is that they are really good. They're going to win most of their games. They have an MVP quarterback. He's won 2 now. But it feels like last year, the way they played, I think they ran the ball 2-3 times in the second half against the Chiefs.
6 rushing attempts total.
6 total. You really start to kind of put the Ravens in the same category as the Bills. Just, yeah, they're going to be really good. But, when push comes to shove, there is some kind of barrier that they can't get over, and we don't know what it is because it's not the quarterback, it's not the coaching, it's not the roster, it's not the lack of home field advantage. We're not really sure what is going to be that thing to take the Ravens over the top. So as a fan, when you are getting ready for another season with the expectations are, I would say, Super Bowl or bust, how confident are you that they're going to meet those expectations?
I'm so glad you brought it. That's such a great question. To get over that Super Bowl hump, some people point at Lamar, which it really isn't Lamar. Last year was Todd Monken's first year as the offensive coordinator, which I was super ecstatic about. Usually most John Harbaugh hires, I'm not a fan of on the offensive side. Even Mike Macdonald, people like, oh, Mike Macdonald's now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Mike Macdonald left the Ravens to go be the defensive coordinator of Michigan because the Ravens gave the defensive coordinator job to Don Wink Martindale, who, of course, blew up our defense, went to New York, blew up their defense, and I don't think he's in the NFL anymore. Wink came back, and we were lucky. And we knew immediately that Wink was going to, Mike came back. We knew Mike was going to do well. He did. We knew he was going to leave. I have that same argument now. Todd Monken, if he leads Lamar to another MVP season, he's going to be a head coach somewhere, and we're going to be starting over. So part of that hump getting over, we talked about just a moment ago, 6 rushing attempts. You might recognize this name, Jerry Rosenberg.
Is that an offensive lineman?
He was, I believe, your interim head coach before Peyton, I think, or at one point.
Before Sean Payton?
I think so. Was it? I think he was over there in
we went
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we went from Vance Joseph to Vic Fangio, and then when Vic Fangio finally got fired, then it was Sean Payton.
Did he finish the whole season?
No. I'm sorry. It was Nathaniel Hackett. I don't.
Hackett was the coach. I don't think he finished the year as the head coach. I think
Gary
Roseberg. Sorry.
Yeah, he was our special teams coordinator, and
so
he was awesome, man. He had the Broncos playing really tough those final 2 weeks, and we were like, what if this guy could have been our guy all along? I do remember him actually vividly. I just forgot his name. And
that's the thing, everyone. So Rosberg was our special teams coordinator. He left, of course, to go to Denver, where he became the interim head coach for a little bit. Of course, with Sean Payton coming in, it's hard, we tried hard to get him a head coach interview out of Baltimore. So after the season ended, after the 6 rushing attempts, excuse my language, it really upset a lot of Raven fans. So after that game, Raven fans were calling for Harbaugh Monken. What happened? 6 rushing attempts against like the 20th run defense in the league. Yes, they knew we were going to run it. Every team has known for the past 3 years we're running the ball. We're running against a stacked box is nothing new to the Ravens offense coordinators. But they said right after the game, no, it was just how the game went. It was kind of part of the plan, this and that. Right after that game, Harbaugh tried to hire Rosberg back to the Ravens staff in a game analytics and the crucial situation coach, essentially. And it was going through. You can probably find the article still talking about it. And last minute, the deal fell through. Harbaugh lets those critical moments get away. Yes, he had the ingenious safety from the punt back like in that Super Bowl. But other than that, he has botched so many other situations in game calling the timeouts correctly. Just he doesn't pay attention to those little things. I don't know if maybe it's because he's a special teams coordinator as well, and it's gotten sloppy. The year where we opened up and y'all threw 7 touchdowns against us in that opening game, part of the reason was for that is in that game, he made a roster decision to take extra defensive tackles into the game instead of cornerbacks. We had 1 or 2 injuries in the first half of that game. After that, the Ravens secondary had no substitutions after the game. We eventually had to just put extra linebackers out there and play even more zone, which Peyton just ripped us to shreds. Yeah. And that was one of those moments. I said, Harbaugh, you had been preaching all year that this was going to be a big game. We were planning all year to go win and open this game because, of course, there was the whole thing. We were supposed to open at home, but we share a parking facility with the Orioles. They were having a kind of a playoff run, and we had to open away, the first NFL team ever to do so. And I was very upset. But let me say this before I end my rant. John Harbaugh is a great leader of men, and there's no taking that away from him.
Yeah. Same with Mike Tomlin. Tomlin.
Exactly. And the Ravens owner has been very vocal. He likes long leadership. He saw it with the Steelers kind of before, and he's like, a lot of people said Harbaugh was on the hot seat and Lamar saved his job, is what a lot of Raven fans say.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the Ravens are one of the only teams that has a team chaplain. I saw a whole special on that, and how Harbaugh he encourages, you say leader of men, he encourages his players, like, it doesn't have to be religious, but it definitely surpasses football. Whether it's problems at home or, marriage, or like, he seems like the kind of guy that's really going to be there for you more than just a a regular football coach. I mean, he's really the gold standard of leading men.
I joke about it. I feel like you could drop him into any professional job in a management leader position, and he would kind of just pick it up and do well because that's just how he is.
And with the Ravens, I mean, you said the long leadership. So they want to
consistent.
Yeah. And I get what you're saying. Colin Cowherd had this quote where he said, "Never try to out happy." Now, you guys aren't winning a Super Bowl, but you're winning 13 to 14, games. You're the number 1 seed. You got an MVP quarterback. Is it kind of weird to think that John Harbaugh could be on the hot seat when you're in that situation? Well, it is kind of weird because you just always have to be aware of what's on the other side. So, okay, we're going to fire John Harbaugh. Who's going to replace him that's a better candidate for that job? And if you don't have a real answer for that, then you're just doing this to, I guess.
Exactly. I do agree with that.
Now, I don't know if he would ever get onto a hot seat should the Ravens be one and done in the playoffs again. But I would just say, be careful what you ask for, because there might not be somebody ready to replace Harbaugh's seat in the way that he's been doing it for the last 10 years. But at some point, it's like the Ravens have to win a couple playoff games, at least get to a Super Bowl again. But I would say Harbaugh is probably like beyond safe. Is that an accurate statement?
I'd say, yeah. Like I said, that was the year, when Lamar was coming in before he even got the start. It was when the talks are really starting to be there. Because, after that Super Bowl win, we gave Joe Flacco that contract. The team struggled. We made some bad. And again, it's one of those ones. I talk about the roster again. I love Harbaugh as a leader of men. Raheem Mostert was on our practice squad. He put 20 touchdowns last year. Harbaugh. One argument I have is he sometimes will take that veteran leader guy for the locker room, but it also inhibits the growth of younger players. Zach Seiler put up 9.5 sacks last year in Miami. That was our 7th round pick that Harbaugh cut.
Yeah.
So some of those young guys get away from us, and that bothers me sometimes. But like you said, if there's not a better solution out there, and every once in a while there was a guy, I would honestly love to have made Mike Macdonald our next head coach in waiting. And I do not have anything to corroborate this story, but it is my personal belief that Jerry Rosburg backed out of the deal to come back to the Ravens because I think he wanted something in writing saying that he'd be the next head coach in waiting. I don't know if that's true. Like I said, it's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and with these long tenures, it really happens like that. I mean, we just saw Belichick hand the torch, to one of his former players, coaches. This is just kind of common with these long tenured coaches. Now, the Ravens have several question marks this year. I was going over this with my buddy that I shoot a podcast with because we were talking about the AFC North in whole, and he was like, Ravens number 1. But I think what people do very often in season predictions is they take what you were last year, and depending on what you did in the offseason, they add 2 or take away 2 wins. It's like very rarely do you see a projection that you're like, what are they talking about? I mean, everyone's going to win 7 games. That's mediocre. Maybe 6 games. I mean, there's really no bold statement. No one ever figures out who the Texans of last year are going to be. And no one ever figures out who you're predicting to go on, a run that's going to fall back a little bit. The reason I have question marks about the Ravens, whereas my buddy just put him in number 1, and I had to remind him of some things. And then he was like, you're right. Maybe those are serious concerns. The defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald, going to Seattle. Is it McDonald or MacDonald? Because I heard ESPN go, so that's so weird. I was watching ESPN and they go, it's MacDonald, not McDonald, like the store McDonald, MacDonald. But they said the same thing about one of our players, and they had it wrong too.
On Google it has it as Mac, so maybe I'm
Well, I can't
on
never
that.
trust ESPN, so I have to ask because they said David A-Chain was A-Chan. And when I went on Texas A&M's website, they said it was A-Chain, like a chain you wear. So names.
Okay. I heard Achan last year. I was like, dang, I called him the wrong name my entire draft special.
I don't know what the right name is, but regardless, they lose a defensive coordinator, which is always tough. Just look at how the Eagles responded to losing their coordinators last year.
Ooh, Shane Steichen. I called that was going to be a huge loss for Philly, and it showed.
Yeah, and when you have a really great coordinator, it is very difficult to replace that. Now, you can do it with talent and good head coach. You can overcome this stuff, but the offensive line is also a question mark. There was a couple of people that are battling. I think it's Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele. They're the favorites to start at left and right guard. But Voorhees, am I saying that right? Voorhees?
Yep, you are correct. Andrew Voorhees.
He missed the entire 2023 season with a knee injury. Then there's
actually, if you didn't watch, that happened at the combine. I was live when that happened. Poor dude. Like,
you were at the combine?
Well, no, I was covering the combine live, kind of just talking about the drills, and I have entire notebooks like just filled with notes on stuff like that for my draft specials. Really getting to watch all the same people. A lot of people don't like the combine, and I understand that, but everything has a purpose. And the combine has some things that are worth watching.
No, I totally agree. That picture on my intro video with the giant Broncos helmet was outside the combine. I actually went there the day because I'm in Nashville, so it was like I think a
Lucas
3-hour
Oil's not too far from you.
No, I think it was like 3 hours. I actually got to see the record get broken for the fastest 40-yard dash.
Ooh, that's exciting.
That was like it's very slow pace. It's not too exciting. I thought they could do better with like entertainment wise, but
I was trying to go this year. So next year, my guy, I'm gonna hit you up.
Yeah, dude. If you especially make sure you bring a notebook because there's a lot of notes to be taken at the combine. It's like, who's that guy? Because sometimes
binoculars and notes.
And to be honest, like by the end of the day, I didn't even need to look at the 40-yard time. Like I could see the difference between a 4.3, a 4.4, and a 4.5. Like it's
so obvious. Like you just seeing that playing speed basically.
And it seems so like minuscule. But
the combine coverage this year too, by the way, was so horrible. I was tweeting at Rich Eisen like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, Rich Eisen, I've always said like I wish he was my dad because
I love him though. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just always like got such a calming voice to listen to. But yeah, the offensive line. Okay. Ben Cleveland, Patrick McCary, and rookie Nick Samak have taken the first team reps at center. They have a free agent guard / tackle and Josh Jones who could add some flexibility and experience to the group. But what do you feel, I guess, a 1 to 10, how confident do you feel about the offensive line? Because it's great that you added a piece we're going to talk about next. It's great that you have Lamar Jackson who can run away from pressure. But ideally, I mean, look at Jim Harbaugh, great coach. First thing he does, he drafts Joe Alt. And now he doesn't have to worry about his left tackle or his right tackle for 10 years. Sean Payton comes in, gets rid of everybody and spends hundreds of millions of dollars on the offensive line, brings in McGlinchey, Ben Powers from the Ravens. So you do see that like the coaches that I guess the winning coaches know how important it is to have a great offensive line. There's got to be a reason for that. It's very rare to see a team make it deep into the postseason that doesn't have a top 15 offensive line. So 1 to 10, how do you feel about the Ravens offensive line? And do you think that it's something to be concerned about this year?
This might be surprising, but I'm at a 7, man. And I'm going to start left or right here. So left tackle, you haven't seen him any this offseason. And there is always worries. Ronnie Stanley has been our solid block franchise tackle. Had a weird injury like 2 years ago, and he didn't really recover right. And he was supposed to come back. The thing is this, what the nice thing about Ronnie, and I'm a little worried, but not. So Ronnie, of course, reworked his deal. It's actually something I covered in my off-season series where I played GM of various teams, the off-season plan. And they reworked his deal almost just like I said. So they basically moved his money up, lowered his cap number. He'll hit free agency next year. So he has a chance to go make some money. Left guard, Andrew Voorhees. Now, I mentioned him a moment ago. I watched him last year tear his ACL live at the combine. It was heartbreaking. Andrew was fighting for that 1 to 3 guard slot, honestly. They didn't consider it a very strong guard. I think there was like Anthony Bradford from LSU, Voorhees from USC, and I can't remember the other guy that was up in that conversation. But a few guys. The impressive thing about Andrew Voorhees, after tearing his ACL, the next day was the bench day for offensive linemen. He went and benched, and he put up the most at the combine. I believe it was 38 reps on the bench.
Wow.
Right after tearing that ACL. That said, the Ravens had finished their draft. We had no picks left. The Ravens came back up in this, and I was actually covering that draft live on my channel. I was screaming, my friends. I said, I can't believe nobody's going to spend this like a 7th on Voorhees and redshirt him for a year. That's a starting guard. That's a 2nd and 3rd round guard that's sitting on the board at round 7 because he's got a redshirt a year. And it's not like the injury happened in December. It happened before the season started.
Right.
So he's getting a season plus.
Yeah.
He's looked strong in camp. There's only been one defensive lineman that's even been able to bully him like straight up. But at the end of the day, he's young. It's his first season. So you got to be, a little skeptical. Center, Tyler Linderbaum, been our anchor for the past few years. I'm not worried about him. He even took on Aaron Donald well, so right guard's the one I think's got the most controversy. So Daniel Falele is a project right tackle. He's been playing right tackle and left tackle the past few years. I think he's on the roster bubble, and they said, let's give him a shot at guard. He's 6'8", 380. That's a big man. And his one knack at tackle was he just had a little bit of footwork and pad level issues. So moving him into guard might help. Ben Cleveland played right guard when Kevin Zeitler last year had an injury. Of course, Zeitler, I believe, signed with Detroit, so they got a really good guard over there.
The rich get richer.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, the funny story is our John Simpson, our left guard, who I didn't think was going to win the start. He played decent. He wasn't great. He played decent. And then, of course, Morgan Moses both went to New York. So they got 2 of the Ravens' offensive line. Ben Cleveland, his nickname's the Mountain. He's 6'6", 320. They did a grip strength test today at training camp, actually. He broke the machine. Basically, like almost 200 pounds of pressure on the grip machine. He was the only one that got up over 190. So
that'll start you right there.
And then finally, right tackle, Patrick McCary has been the Swiss knife of the Ravens defense. I am a firm believer to be a playoff team, you mandatory have to have 6 starting offensive linemen. You have to have someone that is a Swiss Army knife and can play everything. Before we had Patrick McCary, which is why we signed him to like a 3-year, $15 million, 316, somewhere in that range. It was James Hurst, the former UNC product, which he made the Ravens roster purely based off his tape of shutting down Clowney at USC. Because, of course, Clowney at that point went up to Cleveland. So it was a wild ride. The Ravens offensive line got dramatically younger. Dramatically. But so they got bigger and younger. It could be good. It could be bad.
Yeah. And I mean, as long as you have, I guess, hope, right? I mean, it's not like the Raiders quarterback situation. Like, there's a real
Viking fans.
You go through these guys and you're like, I don't know if these guys are going to be great, but I feel great about them starting because I want to know, I want to know what they can do and who they can be.
And there's actually a really good story about Rosengarten, the tackle we took out of Washington. Supposedly a lot of teams were calling the Ravens to try to trade up for him, and that's how the Ravens knew they had to take him there. Basically, they wanted to trade back, but supposedly before Michael Penix came to Washington, Rosengarten played left tackle. He's always been a competitive guy. But when Penix got there, Penix is a lefty. So instead of his blind side being the left, it's the right. He wanted to be a blindside protector, so he switched from left tackle to right to protect his blind side. It's one of the stories the Ravens really liked. It showed the competitive edge. So I think personally the Ravens' idea is to possibly start McCary or Rosengarten at right tackle, but he might be the future left tackle if Ronnie leaves in free agency this year. So either way, McCary played pretty good. I think like 60, 70 PFF grade last year. Not an elite level, but a solid guy. I think he did digress a little, which is a little concerning to watch, to be honest.
And Lamar Jackson will, compensate for some of the issues if there are some growing pains in the beginning. The biggest splash play in free agency was signing Derrick Henry, in my opinion. Now, for some reason, I've been talking to people about Derrick Henry, and they're like, he's on the decline, is what they say. And I say, fair enough. What's he declining from? Right. So is he declining from 2,000 rushing yards a season? So what? Now he's 18, or he's declining again? What's he at now?
I expected that decline last year, and like you said, the decline happened, and I was like, I mean, that's still Pro Bowl worthy.
He was the number 3 graded PFF running back last year. So yeah, he's on the decline. He's still a top 5 running back in the NFL. So people think just because someone is declining and that their prime is behind them, that it means something, and it doesn't. If you're that good and your decline's happening as slowly.
And Tennessee had a horrible line last year.
Oh my God, abysmal. I mean, so Derrick Henry joining the team. And people forget he turned 30 in January. He's not like some 35-year-old running back that might have something left in the tank like Adrian Peterson at the end. Like
Saquon or Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, he's 30 years old. I mean, he's led the league in carries. He did it for the second straight year last year, so they've used the hell out of him. So I get that because of the miles, but the Ravens, I think last year they had the 26th ranked offensive line. So you saw what he looked like with Tennessee's offensive line. If concern A does actually unfold to be an issue, then Derrick Henry signing might not be as great as it looks on paper, and vice versa if the offensive line is good. So how did you feel when you found out Derrick Henry was joining the team after running 6 times in the second half or the whole game?
Ryan Clark, actually, the former Steeler, made actually a really good argument on this. He said, that's great. Hurrah. You got like one of the best backs in the league finally. Everyone's been talking about this. You've been the number 1 rushing offense for like 3 years straight.
Right.
Like you did it with yes, this could be better, but it wasn't that our running backs weren't doing that great. Gus Edwards broke a 20-yard run on one of those 6 runs, and then he never saw the ball again. It wasn't because he wasn't running well. It was a coaching decision and bad play calling is what it was. And it drove me nuts. I literally made a hat said, run the damn ball afterwards. Like,
yeah.
It was just so frustrating to sit back as a fan and like you're watching it happen, calling it out like you're please, Jerry Rosburg, give me your number. I'll call you.
The damn ball when we're not down by 21 points. Like that's the weird part is like if you're so far behind that you're throwing the ball, all 3 downs, like I get it, but the Ravens just abandoning the run game when it was like a 6-point game is something that I'll never really understand.
It was, like I said, beyond frustrating. But so with Derrick Henry, there's been some stories in camp, like his speed's been still surprising people. Like he ran up on Zay and apparently scared the living heck out of Zay. Zay was like throwing a block and he went to go turn around and look, and he expected like Derrick to be kind of still coming from far back and was like right on top of him. But
I love Zay. He was my favorite receiver in last year's class.
He's actually he's a big reason why we drafted Nate Wiggins. The Ravens seem to be really looking at tape from 2 years ago on this draft class. And of course, Zay at BCU played Clemson. And supposedly that was one of the big points is they know Zay's a legit wide receiver in the NFL, and they watched Nate run around with him 2 years ago on tape, basically stride for stride. And they said, oh yeah, give us that.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins was one of my favorite corners in this year's draft too.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't predicted to be, he wasn't Terrion Arnold. He wasn't up there with these other guys. But my buddy, who all he does is college football, like how I do NFL, he said the same thing. He was like, Nate Wiggins is going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud.
He's looking the part. That we were scared he got a little bit of a shoulder stinger or something there in that first game after looking lights out. We were scared for a minute.
Skinny. So you do worry about, same with Jaden Daniels. Like, you do worry a little bit because weight's one thing, but when you see them on the field, sometimes you go, he doesn't look like he could take a bunch of hits.
Emmanuel Forbes on that Commanders team, one of those guys, and he struggled with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he will, put on 10, 15 pounds. That's not uncommon. I'm not sure if that's in the game plan, but Lamar Jackson, who's won two. So
talk about losing weight. Lamar lost some weight for this season too.
Yeah, he put on weight and then he took it back off.
Yep.
I think he was at 215 and he went up to 215 or 225.
And now he's back down under.
And then he played last year and then he wanted to take
he said he felt sluggish and tired, and he also said he got sick of people catching him. He said,
yeah, that's fair because I know, my weight is like 185, but I went through like a phase where I wanted to bulk just to get to 200 pounds. My dad always told me, if you're not 6 feet or 200 pounds, you're not a man. And I'm 5'11 and a half. And
that rip, my guy.
So the only other option was the bulk. It's a joke, but I was just doing it like to be funny. But when I did get to 200 pounds, like I did feel slower. I didn't feel as springy. And it's like 15 pounds doesn't seem like
I've had a few running back friends that told me that they don't like to put on that extra weight, especially like on their upper body, like in their rib cage and all that.
Yeah.
They feel so much slower.
Even when you're doing like push-ups, you're like, gosh, this is harder.
Literally.
Especially if you're used to playing at a certain weight. What's interesting about Lamar Jackson, and this was the thing people were saying when Lamar hadn't gotten his contract yet. People are saying he can't stay healthy. He's won an MVP, but he also has never had a 4,000-yard passing season. Now, if the Ravens rely more heavily on Derrick Henry, tying Derrick Henry back into this, then you might see Jackson's first 4,000-yard passing. Last year, he averaged 229 passing yards per game. He would need to bump up that average to 235 to get to the 4,000-yard mark. So we're talking about an extra 6 passing yards per game. I think Derrick Henry could really open up that passing game for him. What do you say about Lamar Jackson having his first 4,000-yard passing game this year or season this year?
Honestly, hearing you put those averages, 100%. One of the, and it killed me. So of course we've heard, some of these people, the NFL people, especially like last year, they were saying Lamar's got to get that deep ball. Lamar's got to get that deep ball. He has always had a pretty good deep ball, and my critique has been slightly on that. A 3% increase in his deep ball accuracy would literally lead to about 60 to 100 yards more a game. Just so many times it just wasn't on, like he wasn't on that same timing as Zay or OBJ. Even Aguilar had a few where it's just off the fingertips. And we were hoping and crediting a lot of that to last year. Monk, again, first season in Monken's offense, Lamar didn't play a single snap of preseason, just like now. So the beginning of the season really was his first snaps in that offense.
Do you have a problem with that philosophy?
I'm so torn on it because like we got guys like CJ Stroud, out there starting. If I do have one comment on that. I don't know how true this is. I've read reports that Deshaun Watson is going to start for the Browns in the final preseason game. Cool. I think they're dealing with so many injuries at tackle. I think they're down like 5th string offensive linemen. And if that's the case, why are you putting your starting quarterback out there with 5th string linemen? Like, I'm sure Houston is basically playing majority of starters with Stroud to protect him,
Well, I mean, that's going to be his offensive line week 1. So it's like,
that's true.
It's like if he's going to get hurt in the preseason game, then he would have, I believe that you can't think that way. You have to, you're preparing for the regular season. this is what the offensive line is going to look like in the regular season. If you get hurt out there, like, that's not up to us. That's so I don't know.
Good point. That's a good point.
You got to have a balance between fear and letting these guys go out there and play loose. Like, you don't want to put that in his head. Imagine going up to him and being like, we don't want to put you out there because we don't want you to get hurt.
And then week 1 is the same guys walking out there with you.
Exactly.
Hey, guys.
All right. So now, good luck. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot at risk. Aaron Rodgers got hurt on the 4th play in the season. So
get rid of Astros.
People are like, no, we don't want to see him out there. It's like, well, I don't know if it would have made any difference had he gotten hurt in the preseason last year, because he ended up getting hurt so early. I guess there's a balance between it. I think rookie quarterbacks definitely need to be out there. They definitely need to be out there. Guys like Lamar, who have won multiple MVPs, no, they don't need to be out there. But if you're getting a new offensive line together, it would be nice to get some live reps, but they got joint practices for that. And I'm sure they're kind of feeling pretty confident. If Lamar's not going out there, they feel good about the season, I would think.
I know they are a little still concerned about that line. Like, they're looking good in certain situations, but, and of course, the running backs that have been Rashid Ali, the 5th round pick. And I'll be honest, that was one of those picks I was not high on in this draft, just like Kyu Blue Kelly last year, who really didn't work out. I thought there were some really good running backs there in the 5th round that were still available. And he's had fumbling issues. He's starting to go down the depth chart. They brought Kelly in from Cleveland. He saw some snaps, which is a sign they're not happy. Collier and I'm forgetting one other guy who got leveled in that Atlanta game. Shout out to Nashawn Brooks, absolutely lit up for Atlanta. If he doesn't make a roster, he needs to be picked up by some team. But we aren't sure on some of that offensive line run blocking. They should be strong and good, but the run per carry average right now in the preseason has been really bad.
Okay,
really
good.
Bad.
It's not just
and it has.
Broncos.
Yeah, it's a lot of Raven fans in chats are a little concerned about it. But.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to find out right away about the offensive line, because you got Chris Jones week 1 with the Chiefs. You got Max Crosby week 2 and Micah Parsons week 3, and then Von Miller. If he can get back to what he was, I think he'll have a better year than he's had in 2 years this year. I don't think he's done.
I hope for my Bills fan. I got a Bills friend. I really hope he just for their sake.
I got his jersey behind me. I'm a huge Von Miller fan, so
I wanted him in that draft so bad. I'm a big draft guy. All the way back to high school, 2008. I was in Disneyland on my grad night trip, and I left Disneyland to go back to the hotel to watch the 2008 draft. Joe Flacco, Ray Rice, Ed Dixon, Dennis Pitta. I've always loved the draft. I watch every single draft, every single round.
Yeah, me too. I'm a huge fan of the draft. I think it's fascinating. You're like, there's guys that you kind of know that are going to be stars. There's people being drafted in the 1st round that are not going to work out, and just trying to, watch it all play out. And what I love the most is seeing everyone's dream come true. Seeing the phone call ring, the conversations, the tears, the family. I'm a sucker for all of that. So
how excited the fan base is. I don't know if I've seen Bear fans like this in years.
Yeah. Now Bronco fans too are starting to get. There's an energy that. What'd you say?
Oh, I was saying, it's been a while since. What's funny too is my very first game I watched actually was the Super Bowl, and it was John Elway's last game as a Bronco.
Wow.
Was my first ever game, actually.
Against the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first game I ever watched too. But
wow, that's kind of.
Well, I was born in Wisconsin. My whole family are diehard Packer fans. I was at Brett Favre's last game as a Packer. I was almost at Aaron Rodgers' last game as a Packer. My family goes to Lambeau Field maybe once a year or maybe once every 2 years.
I'm trying to go for the Ravens' final preseason game, but there ain't no way I'm making it up this Saturday.
It's an amazing atmosphere. You really feel like you're in a museum. There's just this like historical element of Green Bay that you can feel in the air. It's almost like a magic wind kind of flowing through, giving you goosebumps when you walk past that Vince Lombardi statue. I mean, it's just, there's something about it. And what's really hair raising is when you're driving to the Packer game and you're driving down a street that says, Miller Street. You turn right and it's like Lambeau Street. And then all of a sudden you're like passing houses. And then you look in this guy's backyard and there it is, Lambeau Field. And it's like, it really just puts perspective on how all of these other teams, you're in the city, it's popping, there's big buildings. It's like when you get to Lambeau Field, you're in some guy's backyard. Like, this is not a big city. It's not a big town. It's just like, how did one of the biggest franchises in all of sports come from Green Bay, Wisconsin? It's so unlikely. And that just kind of adds to the miraculousness of the whole experience, because you think you know how it will feel when you get there, but when you really see where Lambeau Field is, you're in a neighborhood. You're not in a town or a city. It's weird.
And that's what I've heard. Man. It's an experience you have. It's on like the bucket list. I feel like of every NFL fan, got to go to Lambeau.
It should be. If you really love the NFL, you should go to Lambeau Field. And you should go in December or January. If you're gonna do it the right way, and put your hunting gear on. That's what all that orange is.
That's how I want. Like that KC game in Miami where it was freezing, I wanted to go to that. I was like, that sounds fun. I know that's psycho, but
I think it was a top 5 coldest game ever. Brett Favre's last game against the Giants, 2007 NFC Championship game. It was so cold. I mean, I don't know another way to say it besides it's cold. But it's one of those that it's so cold that when you feel it, you're looking for a deeper word to explain it. You're like, frigid? What is this? This isn't cold, because we overuse cold. Cold is 55 degrees in the morning when you're kind of chilly. Like, this is a different kind of cold where it's like chemical. Yeah, like, I don't know. It's different.
By definition, freezing.
Yeah.
You go pee outside, it's freezing before it hits the ground.
Right. I mean, they had to stop serving beer because by the time they walked to their seats, it was an ice cube. They couldn't sell beer in the stadium. It was so cold that when we got to the front of Lambeau, it was just me and my mom. She forgot her tickets in the car. So I told her to stay inside, and I ran out to the car. And when I came back in, my face was so swollen that I could barely see just from running to the car and coming back. Like, it's cold.
I cannot imagine taking a Brett Favre pass, like a bullet pass on a slant.
That's all you can think of. The whole time you're in the stands, you're like, how in the world are they? Because the football turns into a brick on those. You're just like, how are they doing this? How is Donald Driver out there with no shirt? It's just wild. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna have your test early. The offensive line is going to be tested early,
and also Zach Orr. That's the real storyline of that game. First time call. Yeah, he's the new defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Former inside
Michael Orr's brother.
No, not Michael. That would be. He's a former undrafted rookie linebacker. Got into the coaching staff. Inside line.
Looks like we lost Darwin for a second. Let's see if that clears up on its own. I'll keep it down here for a second as we wait to see on his signal. But yeah, I mean, we look at the Ravens schedule. So they got the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Cowboys. Then they got the Bills and the Bengals. You look at that: Chiefs, Cowboys, Bills, Bengals. Very tough beginning of the season. And I definitely want to make sure that I ask him about this, because there are a lot of games that are, I would not say they're not I mean, it's the Ravens, so you could say they're winnable, but they're tough, right? They don't play the Giants until week 15. And besides that game, I guess the Broncos, people would say, is one of those, gimme games, but it won't be. It's a very tough schedule. So I'm going to see what he thinks, as for a floor and a ceiling here, but the Ravens are going to have their work cut out for them. This is going to be as difficult as any team's path to the Super Bowl, if they can get to the Super Bowl. It's definitely going to be a wild ride. I mean, let's say the Chiefs, Cowboys, and Bills and Bengals, they could ideally, lose 2 or 3 of those games. And if they did, saying they beat the Raiders, they could be 1-3 by week 4. And what would that do for the franchise? Would people be panicking at that point? September 5th, of course, is going to be the season opener against the Chiefs. But he's not too worried about the offensive line. He loves Derrick Henry. There are some question marks at the backup quarterback position. Rookie 4th-round pick Devontae Walker has been dealing with a rib issue. It's been a non-factor in training camp. Tylan Wallace has been steady, but he's valued more for his special teams ability. Other teams like Sean Ryan, Keith Kirkwood, Malik Cunningham, and Dayton Wade are practice squad caliber at best. You hope that you never need a backup quarterback, but if something were to happen to Lamar, there's no more Tyler Huntley to come in and take over. And Tyler Huntley, I thought, was a backup quarterback where you know what you're going to get. And he can, if you're, up 7 points in the fourth quarter, he can seal the game. Or if he has to start, 2-3 games, he can go 2-1 in that stretch, depending on who he's playing. You kind of lose that insurance. So definitely some question marks over here. And let's see if he might have had to reset his computer. I was just seeing if he messaged me. I see that he's coming in and coming out. So the Broncos and Ravens, that is going to be a really good game. November 3rd. It is in Baltimore. Really, really hope the Broncos can win that. Like, if I could pick 2 games or if I had 3 games that the Broncos would absolutely win, the Steelers week 2, the Chiefs just once, in that Ravens game. That's how important that one is. So it looks like we may have lost him. So let me just make sure really quick. Let me just make sure real quick that he is maybe he'll respond to my message on X. But those are the biggest concerns for the Ravens. Key additions. In conclusion, for me, the Ravens offseason moves have been significant players acquired, strategic draft picks. There's a lot to be excited about, especially when you have Lamar Jackson on your team, Derrick Henry, Kyle Van Noy, strategic decisions on defense and offensive fronts. Has created a lot of optimism with Ravens and their fan bases around this particular roster. Now, there's going to be stability on the offensive line and durability of key players. That's always going to be a concern for every team. But with Lamar Jackson's injury history, successfully navigating those situations is going to be crucial for the Ravens to get back to the Super Bowl and reach their full potential, which I think most people believe is, a Super Bowl caliber, at least an AFC championship type team. But I'm not sure what happened to Darwin. It looks like there was some internet issues, but I'm going to have him back on, and I hope you guys enjoyed this this interview format. I did a stream with him a while ago, and I just was like, man, it's time to have you back on. So we'll definitely bring him back on, and we'll also bring him back on for the Broncos-Ravens game, because I think that's going to be a blast. So Darwin, if you're watching this later, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And just as a reminder, you guys can, I'll show it. That's Darwin Raven 20. That is his Instagram and Twitter handle. So give him a follow. And if you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments your questions. If you want to come on here and be interviewed yourself, just let me know. We're going to keep this thing rolling as the season comes in. What is it? September 5th. We're talking 9, 10, 11. Jeez. We're here. 10. We're 16 days away from kickoff. Barely 2 weeks away. So as we get closer, the anticipation is going to continue to rise. So you can follow me at NFL with Kyle, and you can follow me on YouTube at Kyle Kitzman, KYLE KITZMAN. And I will see you guys on the next stream. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next time.